Leven, and I'm with AARP, and we're at Shaker High School in Leven, New York, and it's the 26th of September, and I'm interviewing Cady, who is a veteran of World War II.
Right.
And we're going to chat a little bit about some of his memories. Okay?
Okay.
It should be very interesting. I got a couple of questions for you just to start. How did you get, what branch of service were you in?
Navy.
And how did that come about? Were you drafted, enlisted?
I was drafted, I believe. At the time when the war started, I had felt that because of the fact that when I was in high school, they took a physical of me, and I had a heart murmur.
Oh my.
So I felt at the time that do nothing but wait and see what happens. I probably wouldn't be able to get before F, you know, because I figured that anybody that has a heart murmur isn't going to be enlisted or anything like that. So that's why when I was called in to, they wanted to check me out for the service. And, you know, everybody was getting, it was near the end when they need more people. So I had to go over to Albany and go through the Army over there. So they had quite a few doctors there, and we checked me out all the way through. And as I was walking, after I got finished and I was walking through, I asked the doctor there, I said, did you find a heart murmur on me? He says, no, you're fine. He says, everything is great. He said, you're in good shape. I said, wow, I didn't expect that. So when I walked out, there's a fellow that represented the Army on one side and another guy representing the Navy on the other side. So when I walked out, the guy in the Army said, hey, buddy, you make a good soldier. I said, I think I'll make a better sailor. So I walked over and signed up in the Navy.
Oh, you were allowed to choose?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And do you recall your first days in service? Where did you go, and what happened to you?
Well, they sent me to Sampson in New York.
Well, up New York State, yeah.
And mainly it's you go through a lot of physicals up there.
What time of the year was that?
It was actually was in May, that month of May. And we had a lot of exercises to go through. I think everybody gets them when they go into service. We had a mile of track that we had to go through, go around a couple times during the day, maybe whatever they decided to give to you. I've gone through 3 or 4 of them in an hour, you know. Everybody did. And of course you had to go through some of the other things.
Well, you were a young guy then.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad then. Not now.
You're going to do it today, right? What did it feel like, though? You were a stranger in this great big camp.
It was something that I sort of felt good about, because I always liked physical education anyway. And I always did a lot of that sort of thing.
Probably, was it your first time away from home?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
Well, I always missed my family. My father and mother were very close to me all the way through anyway. And I could tell you that what happened to me at the end when I was getting discharged, what I went through at that time, would be kind of interesting, I think, because all the time the war was over, and I had decommissioned the ship with a bunch of other fellows, and this was quite a lot of difference, because all the other fellows that was on the ship that sent home, that I had to stay there to decommission the ship.
Let's hold that for the end.
Okay.
Because that's really the conclusion.
Yeah, right. It was a good
for you.
section.
Tell me about boot camp. Where did you do that? At Sampson?
Sampson, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what happens after that?
Well, they always send you to a camp or a place that you're going to learn something that you might need while you're in the Navy. And they sent me to Boston for doing mechanical kinds of work. And that part, we lived in a hotel there at the time, but then we marched through the streets, and we had like a couple of hundred fellas at the time. And we marched down through the streets and into the institution that did this kind of work. And after that, in that time, I left Boston and went to San Diego for diesel school to teach all the small diesels. Right then I figured, well, I'm going to be in one of those little chitneys there in a diesel, and I'm going to have to go pick up the soldiers that are going to go into one of the islands there, in the Pacific.
What were your instructors like?
They were pretty good, because I was used to those type of people, because when I was apprentice in a GE, and I know most of them were young fellas, and they
Did
taught.
they speak to you the same way that the instructors at GE did?
They send you. I was sent to Mount Pleasant High School at night, and they had instructors and everything there, teachers there. You had to go through all the different things that they taught.
And you were in World War II?
Yep.
And where did you go, in terms of where did you serve?
Well, I served on a DE. And,
Right out of San Diego, right out of the final training?
We went to, I went on a troop ship there over to Ulithi, the Carolyn Islands, I think it is. I'm not positive of that, but I think in the Pacific. And it was, Ulithi was a place where the Navy used for new fellows that are going to different ships, because when I got on there,
Like a reception area?
yeah, it was like a reception area, and I had to get on a tugboat and to find the DE-9. That's what the ship I was going to go on. So they were all lined up, all the DEs would be lined up one right after the other.
Must have been an enormous harbor.
Yeah, it was. It's like a horseshoe type thing. It was all of atolls. They would go, it would be a small atoll, and another one would be like maybe 20 feet from that one, but it was only only about 8 or 9, not even that, about 7. Well, maybe we better make it less than that. I think you could almost walk between the two.
Really?
As you go around it, and there might have been 10 of these atolls. It was shaped just like a horseshoe, and on these horseshoes were lined up all these ships all the way around. They went from small ships like the one I was on to cruisers and like that.
That was some sight.
Yeah, it was, and it was, when you look at it back then, you couldn't believe all the ships that were stationed in there. But I got on the DE-9 there.
What was it like when you got on board ship?
It was something I had never experienced, because I'd never been in the ocean much. I've seen it naturally, but I never had a ship that I went out to sort of get an idea what it's like to
Well, you were a new recruit on the
Yeah,
ship,
right,
so how'd
yeah.
they treat you?
Oh, they treat you like an ordinary guy, They throw your bags up onto the deck, and then after that, I had to carry it to the bunk they gave me, and then I was down there with a bunch of other fellows that had bunks alongside of mine.
How many guys were in one of those areas?
Well, the area I was on, I'd say there was probably about 40 or 50 guys,
All sleeping in the same,
same area.
it was big?
Yeah, it was pretty good size, although the ship wasn't too big, but it wasn't too bad. I still can't believe that they said that there's 200 guys on a ship like that, but because it didn't seem like it was big enough for 200.
The sardine can.
Yeah.
What was your job?
I worked in a forward motor room, which was mostly making salt water into fresh water, because everybody had to drink correct, you know, we made sure that we got fresh water to all the guys. And also, you had to have fresh water for the engines. The engines,
Because it would corrode the...
right, they couldn't use salt water in engines. So those all had to be fresh water.
Well, they keep recirculating it?
Well, yeah, because while you're there, you're either working 4 hours and you're off 8 hours, you know, so.
So that was a pretty significant job.
Yeah, so actually they teach you how to set up, to do that type of work. And,
Did you fellows mess, the group on down below mess separately from the deck sailors?
yeah, there was a lot of difference. Ours was pretty good because we had it set up just like you would at home. We had a table. Everybody sat around the table, and we had one of our fellows that worked in the galley. And he would get what we needed, and he'd bring it up. He was set up mostly because we got it so he didn't have to do any work other than that. And so he would just handle the food for us. He'd bring it up and hand it to one of the fellows, and he'd take what he wanted, pass it to the next one, just like he would at home, you know.
Yeah. What was the food like?
It was pretty good.
Was it?
It couldn't complain too much.
I knew the Navy was well treated. Did you see any combat?
Yeah,
Your ship?
quite a bit.
Like where?
Okinawa. We actually, that was the main place that we served.
That's where the 6th Marines went ashore.
Yeah, right. And we had come back from the Philippines, bringing a convoy of ships for that job there. Okinawa was one of the big islands at the time that they wanted. Actually, the Japanese had that island, and it was part of their territory.
Did you folks supply fire support for the assault?
We took care of mostly. They had it set up so that all destroyers and DEs circled that island. And the way they circled it was, the first group that circled it was 20 yards from the shore of Okinawa. They circled it, so they'd be 20 miles out, and there would be a series of DEs and destroyers circling that island. And then it would go back, like, we were 20 miles out when we started, and the next one was 15 miles, and they kept on going down until there was about 5 miles out. And that was a group of ships all the way around, just keep going right around until that last 5 miles.
And what were they?
They were mainly used for, the Japanese at the time were sending in over their Mitsubishi bombers, and we used to fire on them.
So you gave the ACAC fire?
Yeah, and so they would know that they were coming in, so the Army would know that they were coming in, and they'd be ready for them when they got to the shoreline.
Did you have a combat assignment in addition to what you did down below? Were you on a gun or?
Well, I was a talker for the damage control party. I had 6 guys with me at all times, and what I had was a telephone on, and I would be up there. This telephone was right at the wall, or actually the bulkhead that was separating us, and I would have a helmet on plus the telephone. And I would be talking to the bridge most of the time he would let me know what's going on, and I would report that to the engine room, because the guys down below in the motor rooms too, they had telephones down there, so they would know what's going on topside, would not get too nervous about what, would be afraid that they were going to get in too much trouble or something like that. But
they have difficulty getting out.
Yeah, we would let them know what's going on up there.
Were there many casualties on your ship?
Nope, we were lucky. We didn't get any casualties, although a few times we could have, but we were always lucky. They said somebody up there likes us, that's the main reason.
Were there any kamikaze attacks?
Oh yeah, we had one.
Did you?
Yeah, we had. Well, I happened to be on the deck at the time, and I was looking out, you know, with all the ships that we had out there, I was looking out, and there was, this plane came in, was coming from quite a ways down from where we were located, but I knew it was a red-nosed plane. And as we got closer, I sort of recognized it as a Japanese plane. And as it came closer, he looked to me like he was getting ready to plow into one of these ships. You know, of course, we had the ship right next to us, and he came up, and it looked like he was going to come at our ship. And our guys were firing, because the fellow on the anti-aircraft gun was right over my head where I was stationed. And that's why I had to have the helmet, it's because those shells, as they fired, they'd be flying off that place, and they'd come banging on my top of my head. And that's why I had a good sized helmet on. And as it got closer, one of our ships, either the one that was next to us or ours, fired on it, and they finally hit they carry a 500-pound bomb in the nose that would blow up a ship if they hit it like that. So they hit that bomb, and it blew up right in front of us, and the stuff flew all over the air from the plane. In fact, lucky we had to sweep the deck off after we got through, because we want to clean up the decks and like that. And of course, everything that come off of that plane, it's all junk, you know, that just the bomb that exploded in the plane blew the whole thing up.
Did your ship stay in the Okinawa area throughout that campaign?
Yeah, practically the whole time.
And then where'd you go from there?
Well, I have a thing that would tell you in my pocket here.
But tell me about it.
Well, it's back into Guam, and we went back, and then eventually we were sent to go home in San Pedro, I think it was.
The
war was practically over then, because we had brought up, after that, when we got through with most of it, every once in a while, we would go back to convoy oiler. There was these big tankers that we would come up with, and we went right into right along the coast of Japan, and we brought those tankers up there to refuel the other ships that were up ours that were up there. And you'd be surprised, I got a big kick out of watching what happened. These tankers, we would bring up like 10 of them, and with the other ships, and they set up these tankers so they'd be one right after the other, like that. And when that happened, they got them all set up. Then the other ships that wanted fuel, that needed it there, like the aircraft carriers and battleships and cruisers, one on each side would come up. As they come up, go to the furthest one, and then they would start, and every one of them would line up. And you look out there and you'd see, you couldn't believe how many ships we had up there. They're like, it seemed like that as you looked out there, they would disappear on the sight after a while. They were so far away. But they were all on each side of each tanker that was there. And they were all filled.
How did you stay in touch with the family during this time?
Well, I used to get a letter once in a while, about every 3 months.
Really? That's all?
That's it. You were lucky you got that, because everybody else was jumping in to get their letters. And
how did you communicate with them?
So you would write a letter, and then once in a while, one of these small ships that were going to deliver mail, we'd give them to them, and they would take care of the rest of it.
Did you have plenty of supplies? I mean, was it
well, yeah, we had supplies, but every once in a while we would run short on certain things that we thought we need. One time, it was kind of funny to me in a way, because we were having problems with some fuel or food, and we were right next to a British ship, and they said that we could have some of their legs of lamb. And the guy said, that we had there, that we had to go over to there. We hooked up with them, and so we could go over to their ship, pick up the legs of land and bring them back, and then we put them on our ship, you know. But this was in a bay-like area, so it was very easy. So we got up, and I don't know how many guys said, geez, I hate land. I can't stand that stuff, you know. And of course, the British have big legs of them, you know. They have to haul over your shoulder, and you go up. So we
Yes, if you're hungry enough.
well, this guy that was on the ship that was negotiating the deal, he was, I think he was a seaman first class anyway. So he said, you follow me, you know. So, okay, we follow him with these legs of lamb. And then you get to the back part of the ship there so that nobody could see what it's. He says, throw it over the side. So we had to do what he said, so we threw it over the side. Before we got through, we had legs of lamb floating all around that bay area. And of course, one of the officers caught him, you know, so he got, I guess he was a seaman first when he got through.
He wasn't.
He couldn't, so.
Did you ever get seasick?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that comes from.
So I was in San Francisco when I went to this transport from there, and I was going to go all the way out.
That's where you better join your ship.
Yeah, well, yeah, and we went to Pearl Harbor first, and left Pearl Harbor and went to Ulithi after that. But I was on the transport there, and like I say, I've never been on the ocean that much. They gave me a job of peeling spuds down in the galley. So I went down in the galley to peel spuds, and as the ship went out of San Francisco, they hit the waves out there, and there's a lot of them in that area. And as I got out there, the ship was rocking like that, and oh boy, I started getting sick to my stomach. I said, and there was an old chief sitting on a barrel on this side, he's in charge of the whole operation. And I said, Chief, I said, I gotta go to my bunk. I said, I can't stand this, I'm getting sick as a dog. He says, oh, that's nothing. He says, you're just, if you don't think about it and think of other things, don't even think about it, you'll get over it, you know. I said, oh, I look up, I can't figure that one out, you know. So I stayed there, and I kept, finally I went over to him, I think I better go now. He said, oh, yeah, you'll be all right. You're all right, just hold on. So after he left for doing something, and when he left, I took off. I had to go 3 decks to get up to the main deck. I got up there, and I was in the front of the ship where my bunk was. So I went up that way, and when I went, there was the first one where all the guys were going into, you know.
Okay, I do.
The Navy calls it the head.
Where, did you ever have any leave ports, or were you just constantly at sea?
We were always at sea then. There was.
So how long were you actually at sea?
We were actually at sea for probably, except for, you know, different islands we'd stop at, and, you know. We stopped at Guam once, and they let a few of us that had the time off at that time. I went in to the sea, or the seaport there, and walked around and like that.
You also mentioned you came through Pearl Harbor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What was that like? Because it's only...
Oh, back in those days, the ships that were hit by the Japanese were down in, some of them just had their port, their main deck up, would just see the top of it, and then the rest was under the water.
And we had taken them out.
Taken them out.
What do you think of your officers or your fellow sailors?
Well, most
your
of them,
relationship?
yeah, it wasn't too bad. They were fellas that were mostly college graduates, and they were, I think they were a lot like us guys too. They've had some jobs that was handled by other people, and they would showed them how to do the job and like that. And some of them were down in the engine rooms and in the motor rooms too. And because they also knew how to handle that type of job, and so they showed fellas like me what had to be done.
You mentioned